How many freshmen will play a role for the Aggies next season?
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. On today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about, can't KC Concepcion get to 1,000 yards on the season? I'm going to tell you why maybe yes and why maybe no. We're talking about the linebacker room. I mean, we feel good about who we've got there. To start, the question then becomes, are we worried about depth? We'll talk about that. But I want to start the show today talking about the true freshmen on this soon-to-be roster and talk about, will any of these guys play a significant role this season? So, to start with some names, that we'll kind of start at the top here. With Lamont Rogers, the offensive tackle, 6'6.5", 311 pounds. The big issue when an offensive lineman, those of you everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know that I talk about, I don't love true freshman offensive linemen playing significant snaps. The one thing that changes my mind on that is 6'6.5", 311 pounds. To me, freshmen come in and they're physically behind a little bit, and they are. But then there's just randomly that one freshman that is just ready for college. And I think Lamont Rogers is going to be that guy. Now, the big thing here is I still don't see him winning a job necessarily. And that'll be something that we'll kind of talk about once he's on campus and we'll really, deep dive more into it. But I mean, I don't see him playing a massive role, knowing he, is going to, you have a solid amount of offensive linemen already is kind of what I'm getting at. So I don't necessarily know if I see him playing a big role this year, but I do think unlike many, so, we're talking about some other positions, and those of I'm fine with freshmen playing. There's just a few positions where it kind of scares me a little bit. Offensive line is number one on that list. I mean, Lamont Rogers is a player that I think is capable of playing as a freshman, even at the offensive line position, but I don't know if I see it happening, is kind of what I'm getting at there. Jerome Miles is interesting because he's coming off an injury. So what is he going to be able to do this year, I think is still to be seen. If he was day one healthy and good to go, I think Jerome Miles is going to get some snaps. I mean, you've got to look at Texas A&M's wide receiver room and say to yourself, okay, now that Noah Thomas hit the portal, KC Concepcion isn't a crazy old player. Craver's a young player. Hudson's a young player. Terry Bussey's a young player. You've got a young room top to bottom. So it's not like Jerome Miles would have to beat out a ton of veterans. He would have to beat out players that are, a touch older than he is, but he's just as talented as. So Jerome Miles, to me, probably is the number one player on this list that if he is healthy and able to play at a point this season, I think he's getting snaps. I think he's that good. I think he's that talented. Could he beat out a Hudson, a Craver, a Bussey? Sure. I mean, seriously. I think he's that good. The question, unfortunately for him, I think the question is the injury. Because I think if he was healthy, I think he would I think he'd be playing some snaps. I really do. So that is going to be interesting. to see, hey, is he going to be able to work his way into the lineup once he's good to go health-wise? A name that stands out to me here is Rashad Johnson, the safety. You talk about another kid that is ready to play at the college level, at the SEC level right now, based on frame, 6'2", 200 pounds. Johnson's able to do that. I think that Rashawn Johnson is a player that, knowing that safety is a question mark on this roster right now, I could see him walking in and competing. Does he win the job? Does he win a role? To be seen. But knowing that that's one of the positions on this roster that is a significant question mark heading into this year, yeah, I could see him finding a way to work into the lineup. I mean, really, I think that first of all, he's that good. But second of all, sometimes there's players that are that talented but don't have a frame that's quite college ready. Johnson has a college ready frame, and he still has all offseason to get even more college ready. So I think Rashad Johnson's a player that could play significant snaps this year at a position where we might need it from a young guy. So then you kind of get to the Adonis Curry, Jameer Bill-Goins, these corners, Kobe Sellers. You get to these guys, the corners, these incredibly talented corners we've talked about for months and months here on the show about how corner is a position we wanted to continue, and obviously Petaway is part of that conversation. We wanted to see the staff continue to get better and better and better at. These guys, will any of these freshmen play? That's going to be interesting because I just don't, like I said, I could see Johnson maybe sneaking in there at safety, but I mean, you've got some good corners coming back, and you've got some. I just think that all of those corners I listed, I see Johnson, the safety, having a better chance to play than any of them, just based on positions in this roster. Coyote Armstrong is an interesting player, the tight end, 6'6", 248 pounds, another guy. This class, to me, one of the most impressive parts about it to me is how advanced athletically, frame-wise, a lot of these players are. You run through a freshman class often and you go, this guy needs to put on 15 pounds. This guy needs to get a little bit more in college shape. You're not seeing that a ton with this roster. A lot of these guys are right now SEC ready frame-wise. And Coyote Armstrong at the tight end position, another position where it's just a big question mark. What's going to happen in the tight end position is a question mark because we don't know. Is it going to be one of your two transfers? Is it going to be Theo? Right now, we lean toward it being Theo, but there's a lot of upside with Armstrong, and I think he's a player that could sneak into some significant snaps. And he's a guy athletically can catch passes, can block. He can do a lot. I like Coyote Armstrong's upside because of his ability to kind of do it all at the tight end position. Then it's the linebacker, Noah McHale. We're going to talk about the linebacker position. It's not the deepest room, and Kelvion Riggins obviously is mixed in there too. It's not the deepest room in the world, in my opinion, but I think I could see I could see a lot of these linebackers getting some snaps. Not a ton in some late game situations, maybe some not good competition games. That's going to be what happens with these linebackers. And we'll talk more about that room here in a second. So that's my thoughts on those guys. We'll talk about them more in a minute. Then you get to another interesting part of this class, which, of course, is the running back, and DeAndre Ryden. I tell you this, I think that you're going to see the running back, DeAndre Ryden, and then, of course, Jamarion Morrow. I think that you were going to see both of these guys. I just think as talented as those guys are, there's no question the future's bright. But I do see that being a room where you've already got Le'Veon Moss. You've already got Reuben Owens. I just don't see you needing a lot from those guys. They're going to get some carries. They're going to get some snaps. And the upside's there without a doubt. But I don't see them. I mean, DeAndre Ryden, we've had on the show before. Great player, great person. These guys are going to play a lot of snaps. I just don't know if I necessarily see it happening this year as true freshmen for those players. So, I mean, that's kind of where we're at in this class. I don't see a ton of early season snaps or freshman season snaps for a lot of these guys, but you're going to see some freshmen out there. And I think that kind of as we get deeper into the offseason, more of the hype builds, we could see more come from this. So that is going to be really interesting to see what happens with the true freshmen in this class. Let's talk about the linebacker room. Is it deep enough right now? That's the conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and share betting lines around your team or league. Absolutely love doing this with my fantasy league. I like to send betting lines in there. It's a ton of fun to do, which unfortunately I came in second place this year. A lot of pain. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and of course the Locked On Podcast Network. So the linebacker room is one that I anticipate being a room that we see a lot of question marks in the offseason. Taurean York, Scooby Williams, we feel good about those two names. We feel great about those two names. The question then becomes, where do you go? Still got Damian Sanford. You still got the young guys that were freshmen last year. You've still got Lockhart, Jernigan. You've still got McHale, who we talked about coming in. So if you asked me, Andrew, what were your thoughts on the play of Taurean York this season? I would say that he was good, but I thought he was going to be better. Now, there is no question the value that York brings to this team. And I tell you one thing, his value is a lot more significant than just playing the linebacker position. He is a leader on this team. He is a fan favorite. He's just he's a person that, you need on your roster, and the Aggies are very lucky to have such a talented, kind of captain of this team, as we know. I think on the field, though, we need to see him step up a little bit next season. I mean, you pull up the numbers, Terry, you can't be crazy upset about the numbers. He was fine. It wasn't – I just thought that he was going to take this massive step from year one to year two. I think he took a step, but I don't think it was massive. I mean, on the year, he improved his tackle number. He had 82 total tackles. He had a fumble recovery, he had an interception, he had 2.5 sacks. So I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this. If y'all disagree, let me know, because if y'all think he was great this year, tell me. I think that he was really, really solid. And I think that he has room to take another big step. So I want to pull up his defensive grade on the year. So Taurean York on the season graded out at a 71.4. And I mean, you can't be upset about that. You can't be upset about that PFF grade. You know, he didn't have a good game against South Carolina. He didn't have a good game against Notre Dame. He had some rough showings. He graded out at a 44.5 against Notre Dame and a 30 against South Carolina. So those two games themselves were not great. They were not his best showings. But we know that there's more upside within Taurean York. And Scooby Williams, we talked about when he came over from Florida, how highly regarded he was as a recruit. I mean, Scooby Williams was a player that I kind of anticipated taking that step, and he did. I think he was really good last year. But I think he has another step to take this year from really good to great, kind of like York. I think the big question mark about this linebacker room will be, can York and Williams take that really good to elite jump? And if they take that really good to elite jump, it's going to be incredibly helpful to a room that is talented. I mean, a room that's talented, but this defense, we believe you're bringing in players in the portal that are going to take it to the next level. If your linebacker room proves to be a strength and it helps you stop the run and you are really, really talented, I think that it's just going to help this defense itself take a massive step. So that is my thoughts on those two players individually. The question then becomes, do you have the depth? And that is what I need to know. How do we feel? And I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this in the YouTube comments. How do we feel about the depth of this linebacker room? You've got some young guys from last year's class. You got some young guys coming in this year's class. You've got a little bit older player in Damian. You've got Taurean and Scooby. You've got some bodies in this room. But the question is, do you have enough players to be able to suffer a couple injuries? So, I would go get another veteran one and done type of player that's played a lot of college football snaps to be a backup for this roster. Now, it is always hard to find a player that's willing to do that. Hey, I'm willing to come and be a backup in my final year of college football. It's not easy to find a player that's always willing to do that. But I do think that if you could find a veteran that's played a significant amount of snaps, I think it would really, really help this this linebacker room, just depth-wise. That's all you're looking for. So answer me that in the YouTube comments as well. Do we feel good? So answer those two questions in the linebacker room. Do we feel good about the depth currently in the room? And also, how do we feel about Taurean York's season last year? How much more of a step does he have room left to take a step heading into this season? Answer me those two questions in the YouTube comments. We're going to talk a little bit about Casey Concepcion. I believe that he's going to be without a doubt, now that Noah Thomas is gone, undisputed number one guy for this wide receiver room. Will he be able to crack 1,000 yards receiving? I think there's a few factors for yes and a few factors for no that we will talk about coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. I absolutely love the Game Time app. Those of you everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know that I really try and take every single opportunity possible to rave on the Game Time app. It is the only place that I get tickets, whether it's to a concert, whether it is to go see a sporting event, whether it's to go see a comedian. So my dad and I are going to see Shane Gillis here in a few weeks, which we are very, very excited about. And, of course, got those tickets on Game Time. Taking my mom to a concert in Atlanta. Where did I get those tickets? Game Time. Taking my dad to a basketball game. Where did I get those tickets? Of course, on Game Time. It is seriously the only place that I ever am going to buy tickets. I absolutely love the Game Time app. Y'all will too. You got to go check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. KC Concepcion is a player that I think a lot of Texas A&M fans are excited to see on the gridiron. No doubt, I can't wait as well. Can he crack 1,000 yards receiving? You know what's funny? I think he can for sure. Without a doubt in my mind, he can crack 1,000 yards receiving. But there are factors that he can't control. Two factors. One is quarterback play. Two is the offensive scheme. Does Colin Klein want to throw the ball more? Does he want to find a way to get the ball to these receivers more? I mean, we've just seen it time and time again. You know, we always watch this offense last year and we say to ourselves, you've got good receivers, but at times we're struggling to get the ball to them. That was the case last year. You had a couple good guys, a couple guys that weren't, didn't quite live up to the hype, but now you got great guys. So does that change what Colin Klein is going to do offensively? Is he going to try and get the football to his wide receivers more? And then flat out, can Marcel Reed sustain a 1,000-yard receiver? I think that's two of the biggest offseason questions. So I guess my answer to the can't see KC Concepcion being a 1,000-yard receiver, he is talented enough to do so without a doubt, without a question. He's talented enough to do so. The question is, can his quarterback help him to do that? And will his offensive coordinator feed him the ball enough to do it? I think KC Concepcion is going to be such a good possession guy. He's just going to be open when you need a big play, whether it is a big play or it is a 3rd and 4 slant, whatever it is, KC Concepcion is going to be there to get the job done. I think he's incredible. I think this is the get of the offseason for the Aggies. I've changed my mind a little bit. I was big on Micah Hudson, who I still am big on Micah Hudson, but I think KC Concepcion can be a first-team All-SEC type of player and turn himself into an NFL player. That's how good he is. He could be our next elite NFL wide receiver. Oh, and speaking of 1,000 yards, shout out to Mike Evans for tying Jerry Rice's record. That was just really cool. And shout out to Baker Mayfield and Liam Cohen for going out of their way to get that last pass to Mike Evans. Wish he would have gotten one more yard for our friends over at FanDuel and myself included. But really good for Mike Evans. Proud of him, how he represents this football program, this university. Heck of a season, heck of a career. Good for him for keeping that streak alive. But can KC Concepcion be an intelligent receiver? Without question, he's talented enough to do it. The two questions become, can Marcel Reed get him the football enough to do it? And will Colin Klein throw the football enough to do it? Those are the questions. Leave in the YouTube comments y'all's thoughts. Will KC Concepcion be an 1,000-yard receiver for this football program? Leave also, if no, is someone else capable of doing it, or will we just flat out not have an 1,000-yard receiver? Curious to hear y'all's thoughts in the YouTube comments on that. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank y'all so much for being here every single day. I really, really do appreciate it. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit that like button. Helps a lot. Leave a 5-star review wherever you listen on a podcast platform. Subscribe there as well. All that helps me out and helps the show out a ton. Hope everyone has a great rest of their Monday, and we will see y'all tomorrow right here on Locked On Aggies.